We have Suhas Motwani. He's a co-founder of one of Asia's largest volunteer-driven product companies, the Product Folks, with a whopping 150,000 members, as well as the Product House, which is a fast-growing new tech community with 35,000 members already. Suhas is currently building a suite of productivity apps like Indistract, which helps folks fight digital distraction. Lord knows we all need that. So, this is a talk sponsored by Better Mode. Suhas will be regaling us, with on data-driven decision making and community management. And it turns out we're actually going to pause, in fact, for a moment and move to our sponsor message. Let's see.
Community is the future, so we need to innovate to engage our communities. And as we innovate, our activities spread out across different platforms. This adds too much friction to the experience. But what if all these experiences could happen in one place? Gradual removes the friction and makes community easier. Everything your community needs, all under one roof with Gradual.
Hey,
Suhas, you're here. Fabulous. I already set you up for success, introduced you and everything. Are you ready to rock or what?
absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Fabulous. Take it away.
Awesome. I think, can everyone hear me? Can you guys hear me? Awesome. Just a second, I'm sharing my screen. Let me know when you can see my screen. Just give me a second.
No stress. It's all good. I'll let you know. Maybe you could refresh. I know this happened
Yeah, I think
in the previous session.
just a sec.
You ready to launch your community? Meet Circle, the all-in-one community platform for creators and brands. With Circle, you get everything in one place. Lively discussions, all your community events. You can go live in your community, broadcast to 5 people or 500 people. Pull your members up on stage, host small group coaching calls, expert interviews, live workshops, anything. Easily accept payments, sell memberships, and earn. There's private messaging and group chats. The best part? Your community can match your brand and works seamlessly with all your existing tools. Circle powers thousands of the most popular communities online. It's your people in one place, all with one tool. Start your free trial today.
Awesome. I guess you
Yes.
can see it now.
Perfect. Slides are up and we can hear you. Go for it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Victoria, and everyone who's tuning in. I hope you all have been enjoying the session so far. Mine's going to be a short one. I think one thing that I am super, super excited about in the future of communities is definitely how we're moving more from an intuition-driven mindset to more of a data-driven decision making, and especially with tons of tools coming in this space. So I'll quickly share what we will be covering today. Very quickly, we have an agenda for today. I know it's a short 15-minute session, but I'll try to keep it as tactical and as value driven as I can. First of all, why community management came through, and this current shift that we're seeing towards a data-driven community management approach. I know we're all on two schools of thought, and we will probably figure a right balance. But there is a huge, huge narrative shift, as well as live examples to show you why being data-driven is really important. Second, I think the difference between metrics and insights. I think this is a fine line, but that'll help us understand why it's important today. Then I have a snapshot. I've just made a dashboard that helps you understand what metrics you can use. Of course, these are all nuance driven, and not all might be relevant to every type of community, but these are the most relevant ones, at least as a starting point. Next, we move on to tools. I think that can be really useful. Again, tons of tools in the market. I'll share with you something that we've tried at the product folks and why it could be useful. Some pitfalls, some learnings, and lastly, I think how Notion does it. Right. So we'll try to cover as much as possible. Kicking this right off. I think I've seen, I think, a lot of sessions around DevRel communities come through. Given many of us might be from building brand communities in the tech space, or just a market that we've seen over the last couple of years. I think hiring good developers had become rare, right? And I think this is the narrative that we saw on Twitter. And I agree. I think finding really good developers were hard, but I want to ask you a question. What do you think is rarer in terms of finding? Um, any thoughts on what do you think is harder to find? Yeah, I think some of you all did mention that. Not in my words, but in Naval's words, I think proven community builders are even rarer and higher leverage than proven developers and designers. The reason for this being there is no school or playbook for this, and that is why it has become super important today, and even harder to find great community builders because there just wasn't enough playbook. I know he wrote this way back in 2019, and since then, at least, I think there have been some books that I keep going back to. I've been able to learn from Richard Millington, David Spinks. They've been writing some amazing stuff in the books that they've put out there, and some of the tweets that they put out. So at least since then we've had some folks that we can go to and learn more from. But a little background, I think I've been building communities for the last 8 years now. I think started building a couple of my own communities, but the one that is something that I'm really focused on is something called the Product Folks. It is one of Asia's largest product communities. We're over 175,000 members. So some learnings from that. And like I shared earlier, I think all of us building communities are in different spaces. So there will be different learning. Now, hopefully some of my learnings might be useful to folks tuning in. And if you have any feedback, if there are some learnings that you had, I'd love to jam with you. There's a statistic that I pulled up. This is again to the point on why it is really important today. From a study that was done, I've added the link to the bottom, but there was a study done last year which said that the number of Series B plus companies building communities has increased from 33% in 2020 to mammoth 80% in 2022. Right, in just 2 years, I think lots of Series B plus companies, so lots of large companies coming in to focus on community-led growth, which is essentially one definition could be connection plus interaction over transaction. So building up that layer, and we'll see what are some important ways we can do this today. There's my slide. I think jumping right into some of the measures. We will go through each one of these, and I'll tell you why I've divided it the way it has been done. Divided into 5 main buckets. I think I'll start off with your member health, right? The first 3 are essentially your member health. Some of these I know all of us track. I think these are largely for digital communities. Becomes slightly harder when you're doing offline only communities. That is where I think product folks started. But something that we like to measure is how many new members are getting added every month. This helps us build some rituals around them as well. And I think we all know how important that is while building community. And next up, I think it is not only important to have new members coming in, but also to measure how many active members you have. This helps you. I think that churn rate will help you determine, okay, what are some activities you can do. And it is always important to have some fresh energy coming in, right? So it always allows you to understand, okay, hey, how many new people are coming in. And at the same time, the active members or the churn rate will allow you to tell what are the activities or what are the initiatives that your community does that might help you understand what are the initiatives that you should be running, right? There might be something that people aren't finding value in. You might want to remove that up. And by active member rate, I think one thing, just a caveat there, is you can decide how many, like your measurement of active members can be different, right? Some of them might measure it on a daily active user basis. Someone will measure it as a weekly active user. Again, depends on the kind of community you're building. It could be a monthly active user. I suggest not more than that, because then it becomes slightly challenging. if someone's not coming back to your community at least once a month. But then again, I think the nuance lies in the type of community you're building. So I think first up, I think it is super important. If you're not doing anything else, it is important for you to navigate and understand what is the kind of members that are coming in, what frequency they're coming in at, and it might take you some time to set up some analytics around this. But I think this is where you would want to start. Next up is definitely engagement. Again, there have been schools of thought on how you can measure this. So I think two things that I have tried to measure is your member to contributor conversion rate. I think for all large communities or medium to large communities, it becomes slightly harder because we all know some general metrics that come through, right? Only a small percentage of your members or your users will become, people who will contribute. Others might engage, and there will definitely be a larger percentage of locals. But if you were a community builder, can you focus on maybe just trying to increase the member to contributor conversion cycle? The reason I say this is, yes, not everyone needs to contribute. I think I you don't have to push people to gamify just meaningless conversations on a group. It has to be meaningful. But if someone's lurking around, I think there's a direct correlation to them churning out of your community. So among the lurkers, it is important for you to find out, hey, are they, maybe the ones that don't have enough time to contribute, but they're still interested in your community, or are they not finding value, right? I think that is one of the questions that you need to answer. So that's why I think this particular metric really helps your member to contribute to conversion rate. And this was hard to measure earlier, but I think now there are tons of tools, and I'll show you that on the next slide, that can help automate this bit for you, right? So that is something I think has become a lot easier today. Next metric, I think under engagement, I'd like to highlight is UGC. I think one thing that's really helped us. We haven't spent a dollar in marketing, but today with we've got some cycle of content and community coming together. Our social channels have been really active. We've crossed over 100,000 followers on LinkedIn. We have over 60K on Twitter. I think that's really helping people discover on the UGC bit. Some other metrics that I've mentioned, I think, on growth, contribution, and retention. I think I just got a message on the time, so do let me know if I'm going over time. Francisco, just give me a heads up. But yeah, I think some other metrics that I've mentioned is on growth, contribution, and retention. On growth, it is the growth rate percentage. I think we're already measuring this, right? Growth rate and referral. I think this is a common metric that we try to measure. And growth rate, if you're measuring your member active and the new ones coming in, I think growth rate is something that you will get as a byproduct of that metric. And referral again ties back to UGC. The reason I say this is I think most great communities are built on word of mouth. So you need to figure out referral engines that can help you, whether incentive driven or not. I think this is super important for word of mouth to kick in. Next one is on the contribution metrics. I think again ties back to engagement. One interesting one that I think there is a bot. We use our largest community is on Slack, so this definitely works if you're using an online community. There's a Slack bot that helps people upvote if this was helpful, right? And then we tag this back to the member. There are different ways to do this, but I think just aggregating maybe on a monthly basis who's got the most helpful votes and maybe giving them a shout out. That's what we do. Once a month, we give a shout out to person who's got the most helpful votes on our community. That just helps you figure out who your power users are, power members are, and makes the member also feel great. So I think this is one interesting metric, something different from what you'd find online. I think that is one. And again, I think one thing we try to get back is on the repeat contribution. This helps you tie back sometimes to the active members, right? One is quantitatively figuring out, okay, who are our active members, and repeat helps you qualitatively figuring out, okay, who are the ones that are really adding value to your community, right? Last up is your retention metrics. Again, some of y'all might be figuring out, okay, I want to go deeper into why the churn is happening. I think member retention rate or churn rate, you all can figure out. Second is the duration of engagement, right? Like we mentioned earlier, there will be a large portion of your community that might be lurkers. Here you can figure out what is the duration that they're engaging, right? In the lurker category, if someone's signing in maybe once a month, versus someone who maybe might not be commenting or reacting, but does come back to the community for 30 minutes every day, right? There's a difference between these two members, although they might both be in the lurker category. I think this is something that might be interesting for you all to figure out. Okay, in the lurker category, and this is something I've struggled with. How do you get them to re-engage? I think duration of engagement at least helps you split this particular cohort, right? So I hope this was helpful. I think this is just a snapshot. Of course, there are different metrics that you can go into, but I like to keep it simple. I think you don't have to go with all these metrics to even begin with. You could pick just one metric from, member and engagement to start with, and then add in others. Um, you don't, and yeah, that's a caveat. You don't. I think there are 10 metrics on screen right now. This is how I think your dashboard will look great in case you are setting up, I think, for larger community. This is probably, something that can help you set up your dashboard, but you don't have to start with all of them. Start with, I think, the basic ones to begin, build that foundation, and then some of these can add on. They will just give you deeper insight into where your members are at. And I think especially for larger communities, this is super useful. And also, some of these metrics are now possible only because of community tools that are available today, right? I think, as community builders today, there are tons of tools available for us, and it becomes slightly difficult to sometimes, choose what to go with. Here are some of the tools that we've tried and we've used over time. I think today's session is on community intelligence or data driven, decision making. I think, the four that we've tried, some of y'all might recognize the logos. The one that we've been using a lot more is Threado, I think, largely because they already have the automation layer along with, I think, now the support layer coming in with AI, right? So I think, along with community intelligence, because they have, think of it, right? There are so many activities that can be, automated. I think they've been able to do that really well. So do check that out. Apart from that, I think, happy to show if anyone's interested to go on and understand how we've set up our dashboards. Please reach out to me. I think I'm just coming to time on my session, but would love to take if any of you have any questions. If not,
Yes.
I'll probably with an interesting screenshot.
Thank you so much for sharing. Can you hear me well?
Absolutely.
Great. So we do have a few questions. Time is timing, so we don't have that much of it.
Perfect. Perfect.
They're all in the chat though, so you'll be able to answer those. But off the
Awesome.
top, I think this one's something you could probably answer quickly is how do you define someone that has churned?
Absolutely. So for us, it is, on a weekly basis if it is on our online channel. And so weekly basis, if someone's churning out, at least we try to send them some reminders because we want to understand. I think our D1, our D3 metrics are strong because someone coming into our community, they've been pretty active. But after D7, we at least like to send them a reminder. If they haven't opened it for a week, we've seen that largely if they're not coming back after a week, and it all depends on the kind of community, right? As a product management community to begin with, so lots of operators coming in, and then, after 3 months, if they haven't even opened the community, that's when we try to move them to a state where they're not active. So there are two metrics that we measure. They're really important for us to measure if someone hasn't opened it after the first week, because it helps re-engage, right? It's very difficult to get back a user that has completely churned, but after a week, if you send them a nudge, there's still some relevance that, hey, I joined this last week, I know something about it, maybe I should go back. And then that nudge really helps. But after 3 months, if they haven't come back to the online community on Slack, we consider that as a churned member on the community. But then we also measure some of them might be, engaging with us on social, and this has become easier today with the tools available. I don't think we were able to do this maybe 2 years ago because we didn't know how to do it. But today, I think some of these tools make it a lot easier, right? So I think dashboard helps you with some of these insights, but some of these, automations weren't possible. At least we didn't know how to do that 2 years ago.
I think you speak for all of us that weren't able to
Yeah.
do a lot of that 2 years ago. So, but you
Correct.
bring up a secondary question, which is so for your whole graph, on the growth measurements, member
Yeah.
engagement, blah blah.
Yeah.
What straight up
Yeah.
3 most
Yeah.
important measurements would you say are crucial if you're bootstrapped? No money, no
Absolutely.
time, no other people on the team. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, just to give you context, we're completely bootstrapped. I think we're 100% volunteer driven. Yeah. So we haven't raised a penny, and, completely organic, right? So we've grown. And I'd say this is also because of the space we are in and the geography that we're in. I think product management has just generally become so hot in Asia that people were looking out, okay, hey, where do I go, right? And somehow we got in. So I think there was a lot of luck to play. But answering your question, top three, I think if you're setting up some of these metrics, I'd love to measure new and active for sure, because that'll at least tell you who's coming in, what frequency, are you growing even, right? Qualitatively, you have a sense, you have an intuition, I'm growing, but you need that quantitatively to tell you, okay, this week I did these activities, it did show up a bump, so maybe I'm going in the right direction, right? And on the active members, if you're churning out, you'll know, okay, maybe these initiatives are not as helpful. Can I chat with my members to understand what do they want and do more of those initiatives? So these are, I'd say, like at least top two if you are setting it up. Third, either on the engagement or on the contribution metric, at least understand who your power users are, power members are. So that then I think you can build that inner circle. That helped us build the volunteer layer. All our volunteers are people who engage in the community and then build them. In fact, I probably started the community, but then like 99% of our current volunteers or our core team is someone that I found via the community. I didn't know anyone from before. So I think building that active member layer is super, super important. I think that is just the one thing that really helped us.
Absolutely. I think that's a community manager's dream, chef's
Yeah.
kiss, having
Right.
community members come up and rise out and blossom into their roles. That's
True.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Suhas, thank you so much for your time, for sharing this with us, and for bringing your joy and exuberant energy.
Thank
I've
you
been
so much.
feeling it over here as well.
Thank you so much, Victoria. I'm
Um,
glad I was able to join. Thank you so much for hosting us, and you're doing an amazing job, taking us
Stop.
over through this.